It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Gotta wait. There we go. Now it's over. Had to wait till the little outro music completely finished with that last guitar slide down the fret, you know? How are you guys doing this evening? I have to say that I've probably heard that song a ridiculous amount of times. When I think about how many live streams I've been using that music for. You know, I've been doing these. Let's see, I started my channel alone in November of 2017 is when I started my channel. And the live streams, I think, started by like June of 2018. And I've been doing them pretty consistently every Monday. If I had to guess, I might have missed maybe less than 10 live streams is what I've missed. So try to stay consistent as possible, which is also pretty crazy because I can't stay consistent on anything else in my life. Everything always gets thrown off because of work or whatever, but it's kind of crazy. But yeah, that same intro music, I don't know, I still like it. I still dig it. And actually, when I found the second intro song, which is the first one that I play now, I like the first one so much. Now I'm getting really confusing. But I like them both so much that I play them both. So, and the whole, you know, I get people asking like, why the intro music? Why the headphones? And I know you're just joking, but still. The headphones is so I can hear myself, because when you're talking into a microphone, it actually, at first it's kind of overwhelming hearing yourself, but then you get used to it when you're talking, and it helps you to hear your levels. And like, I can hear what you guys are hearing. So if I get too close to the mic, like I can hear that, and I can remind myself, hey, stay away from the mic, that kind of stuff, or eat the mic, or do whatever you got to do. So the headphones are really just, you know, an excuse for me to listen to myself talk is really what they're for. And as if you guys clearly see the videos, you know that I like to listen to myself talk. So ironically, you know, one of the questions that I get majority of the time, you know, how can I charge my customers to film these service calls? Am I doing them an injustice? That kind of stuff. And actually, no, because I've said this a bunch of times, but the way that I troubleshoot is to talk to myself and rationalize with myself. I'm a a vocal person. So even when I'm by myself, I'm talking to myself, answering questions. Okay, what about this and what about that? So exactly what you guys hear in the video is typically how I talk, even if I'm not filming a video. So I definitely have some mental issues. And while I'm talking about that, well, before I get into that, let's start this thing off right. So hello, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm alive. It's another day. I woke up this morning, so I guess that's a good thing. Sometimes I question that, but, you know, I guess it's another good day. We are doing well over here. The weather is cooling down a little bit, but, you know, it never gets really cold here in California. But today, I think it was maybe 85 degrees outside all day, and then tonight it'll probably drop down into the low 60s is what it'll drop down into, and then we'll have that off and on until about November-ish. Then we'll have the Santa Ana winds, which is an annual wind event that we get in the Southern California region. And then after the Santa Ana winds, that's when our cold season, right? Cold season, because we don't know what cold is, but that's when everybody gets out the Ugg boots and the beanies and zip up hoodies, you know, because that's all we need for our cold weather here. But yeah, we don't have real winters here. And then we'll have a somewhat cold season until February-ish. And then it'll start gradually warming up into the 80s. And by the end of April, it'll start hitting the 90s and then so forth and make its way through. So, but yeah, I'm doing well. And for those of you guys that are new here, I don't know why I do this, but for whatever reason, I feel the need to do so. My name is Chris, and I'm an HVACR service technician here in Southern California. And if you're completely new to the channel, I make these videos. Maybe you haven't seen my videos. I don't know. But I make these videos on YouTube as a training aid for my employees. And I, after some reluctance and some time, I decided to make them public. And here we are now a couple years later. Yeah, I do these live streams to answer questions and kind of help myself stay sane because I get so many emails, comments, messages, all that stuff, and I find myself staring at my phone 24/7, or I found myself staring at my phone 24/7. So I started doing the live streams to consolidate the questions and answer them in a live format so that I didn't have to type responses to the same questions 20 times. I literally get the same questions over and over and over again. So, yeah, that's the whole point of doing these things. So definitely a lot of things I want to talk about. For those that are in the chat on YouTube, do me a favor. If you guys have questions or things you want me to cover, put your question or your comment in caps lock, all capital letters. That helps me to see it. And remember that there's a lot of people in here, and they'll continue to file in and they'll continue to ask questions. So if I don't see your question, it scrolls by. It makes for bad internet, I guess, or bad whatever you want to call it. If I sit there and scroll through the comments a bunch of times. So just keep reposting it until myself or one of the moderators tells you to stop. If I completely miss your question tonight, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and I'll try to respond to it in there. Okay, so let's get on with this. I want to talk about, and I was kind of joking around in the beginning that I'm a little bit crazy in the head, and I know that I have issues, okay? But don't we all, right? I really think that we do. And I feel like the word normal doesn't really make sense, okay? Because what is normal? Is it normal to have minor mental issues, to have anxiety, to have depression? Is it normal to not have any of those things? Or is it normal to have all of those things and hide them and pretend like you don't? What is normal? Why do we even use that word? I feel like the 98 DeVille, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. That's amazing. I really appreciate it. He said to smash the thumbs up button, so please do, guys. It'll definitely help out the stream. But when it comes to anxiety, depression, all that good stuff, okay, guys, we all deal with it. And I feel like a lot, and I could be wrong in this, but I feel like a lot of people, there's like a stigma associated with it and nobody wants to admit it. I feel like in my heart, more people have these issues than not. And we need to talk about it. We need to communicate. We need to normalize this stuff because we all deal with it, okay? You guys may see it in my videos. I may express frustration or anger or whatever. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I express it to my friends, to my family, to my wife. It's important that we communicate. I'm not perfect. I've realized, and I've seeked. I don't know if that's the right word, but I've gone and got help. I've spoken to therapists and psychiatrists and dealt with issues. Okay. And what I've come to terms with for me is that I'm going to deal with those issues for the rest of my life, but I've just learned better ways to cope with them. That's what works for me. That's how I've learned how to deal with it. So I just want to talk about this. I know it seems silly that I talk about this more and more, but I think more people need to talk about this stuff, okay? Because this is things that we all deal with, all right? We need to, or I feel like, you know, I would hope that we can all start sharing this stuff more and more. That way, you know, people don't feel isolated and scared and upset and feel like they're all alone. I mean, we all deal with stuff, guys. All right. Look at that. Jason Johnson says, is it normal to want to strangle most of humanity? Oh, no. Okay. Meaning, yeah. You know, if I'm going to tell you guys a story. I don't know if I've told this story before, but I am the type of person that wears asshole on my face. Okay. I just do. I have that look on my face. So my daughters and I were at, this was maybe a year or two ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, to be honest with you, but we were sitting, my wife was out of town, and my daughters and I had gone to a local plaza here in Riverside called Riverside Central Plaza. And it's just a couple restaurants and different things. And we were sitting outside, and there was a lady going around. She was clearly, you know, something was going on. She might have been homeless. Who knows? But she was walking around trying to sell candy bars. Mind you, it was like 100 degrees outside, and she's trying to sell chocolate bars that are probably all melted. But she's walking around to everybody. And when it came time for her to come to the table where my daughter and I were sitting, you know, she walks right past us, moved on to the next table. And both of my daughters looked at me perplexed. And my oldest daughter said, Dad, why did she walk right by us and not try to sell us that candy bar? She went to every other table. And I said, because I have asshole written on my forehead. I wear it on my face, and people know, for the most part, they don't approach me, okay? Because I just have that look. It's a blessing and a curse at times, right? Because I'll be in a supply house, and there'll be someone looking at me. I'll just notice like, hey, someone's looking at me. And then later on, I'll get an email. Hey, man, I saw you in a supply house, but you looked busy. I didn't want to bother you, you know? And then it's like, I'll have to email them back. You know what? I get focused, and I get just in the zone when I'm doing things. So, you know, if you guys ever see me out in public, stop me and say, hey, you know, just say what's up. Sometimes I don't pay attention to what's going around me, and I'm just, you know, just mind focused on whatever I'm dealing with or whatever. So I just have that about me. Let's see. Let me see what else we got going on. I'm going to look in the chat real quick, and then I'll get to my list. So, let's see. Could an expansion valve be installed in an upside down orientation? Yeah, I've seen expansion valves installed in an upside down orientation. The problem that I will see, depending on the manufacturer, different manufacturers have different mounting requirements that you want you to do with different valves. The one thing I will say that I've noticed can be a problem is when an expansion valve is installed upside down. I've seen it very regular. The oil will start to accumulate in the power head, like right where the power head screws to the valve. I've never really found a problem with that, but when you go to take a power head off, you'll just sit there and have to drain oil out of that thing. It'll just kind of you know, just pour out for a minute. But it just depends on each manufacturer. They have different ways that they want you to mount certain valves. Same thing with like solenoid valves and different ones. Depending on the type of solenoid valve or type of expansion valve, they may require you to mount it in a certain direction. Interesting. It says that YouTube is experiencing buffering. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's working on my end, so let's hope this thing's working. All right. Ike, thank you so very much for continuing to be a supporter. And Ike's pointing out that I do have a Discord server. I got to be fair and honest that I'm not in that Discord server in a very, very long time, but there is a Discord server. It's the HVACR Videos Discord server, and it's just a place for people to hang out and talk. If you guys, I'm really bad at having this stuff. So if you guys are interested in the Discord server, shoot me over an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com, and I'll share you guys the link and all that good stuff. Okay. All right. Let me see what else we got going on in here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get to my list of things to talk about. So, I was scrolling through Facebook before the stream, just kind of looking at all the comments and emails and different things like that, trying to figure out what was going on. Oh, interesting, Chris Anderson. So it did buffer. Huh, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. But anyways, I was scrolling through Facebook, and there's an Ice Machine group. It's called Ice Machine Peer-to-Peer group. And it's, you know, just people talk about Ice Machine related questions and stuff. And I was in there, and I noticed a question that I thought was worth talking about on the stream. So it was more of a comment saying, you know, why do the locations, and let's give you some context. It was a full at ice machine. It was off on a clogged drain safety. And there was clearly, with the picture shown, there was clearly a bunch of calcium showing up. And I'm not going to share the guy's last name, but it was a Facebook person that I communicate with regularly named Roger that had posted this. So it was talking about calcium buildup in the machines. And the question was, why do locations think that maintenance is robbery? Alluding to the fact that restaurants or locations that have ice machines sometimes don't want to do preventative maintenance because they might think that it's a ripoff or something like that. We're guessing on why they don't do it, right? Because we really don't know. But I'm going to say that a lot of the blame when it comes to preventative maintenance and the lack of preventative maintenance on ice machines, I want to push back on the manufacturers of said ice machines. Majority of these times, I feel like the manufacturers are not doing a good job representing the way that their machines need to be maintained. Having a machine given to a customer and then because a lot of these customers buy these machines themselves, okay? If you're dealing with national chains and big people like that, majority of them are buying the machines direct from the manufacturer. The contractors, for the most part, when you're dealing with restaurants and things, unless it's small mom and pop restaurants, the contractors typically don't have a lot of say and or don't get the opportunity to... what the heck is going on here? Did my stream... I'm getting like weird messages. Oh, that's weird. I'm getting weird messages from my streaming software. But the manufacturers don't do a good job of relaying to the consumer the amount of preventative maintenance that needs to be done. And or there's certain manufacturers that share information and advertise that their machines are so easy to clean, the end user can do it themselves. And they don't share truthful information about how long it takes to properly clean these machines, okay? So I feel like they're all trying to sell their machine, and their marketing materials are saying ours are the easiest machines to clean, you know, and it's all marketing PR information, and it's not information that's very true in my opinion, because to properly clean an ice machine takes hours upon hours to strip the entire machine down, pour the cleaners in it. They all say, oh yeah, just put cleaner in, push the clean button and move on. It's not that simple. You need to break these things down. You don't necessarily need to do that every month, but depending on which manufacturer, you do have to do it. So I feel like the manufacturers are not doing a good service in how they market their machines. Now, if the contractor's selling the machines, then sure, you know, they need to do a better job too of letting the consumer know that this machine has to be cleaned, you know, this often, or water filters need to be installed, or insert whatever here. One of the questions that I see often on social media too, and I'm going to say that I'm guilty of this too, is, you know, when it comes time to sell water filtration for ice machines, you know, it's not a one-stop shop when it comes to water filtration. Every different city, every different county might have different water quality. And it's not really just a one-stop shop when it comes to water filters. But the manufacturers, again, are to blame for this, because almost every ice machine manufacturer out there sells their own brand of ice machine water filter. And then they say, yeah, just sell this filter and it'll keep the water clean. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to keep it clean for the area you're going into. Different areas require different filtration. So again, I feel like it falls back on the manufacturer for not educating people and letting them know. Now, when I said that I'm guilty of that too, I am, okay? Because, you know, you sell an ice machine and then you buy, you know, you're selling a Hoshizaki ice machine, you buy a Hoshizaki triple water filtration system and you tell the customer they're good to go, when that's not necessarily true, okay? The real way to do it, and hardly anybody ever does this anymore, but the real way to do it is to take a water test, send it out for testing, and find out what's in the water and what you need to do to remove said minerals, chemicals, whatever it is in the water from the water. Another interesting point of discussion, and this is very interesting on some older ice machines, especially on some of the older Manitowoc ice machines that had water level or water sensing probes that actually touched the water, right? Water level sensing probes and ice thickness probes. On the old ones that actually touch the water and touch the ice, and that's how it would terminate, you can actually clean the water too much, because if you remove too many impurities from the water, it doesn't have conductivity anymore and it wouldn't work right. So that was a whole nother thing. You know, there's actually the possibility of cleaning the water too much, but that's on the older machines, not really on the newer ones. They've addressed it and fixed a lot of things with them. But you know, there's all kinds of interesting factoids when it comes to what we do. And it takes research and listening and talking with manufacturers and hearing horror stories and learning and being like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or, you know, this is why we need to do that. So interesting. All right. So let's see what we got. I'm gonna look at the chat real quick. And let's see. You're sitting here next to your wife watching me. Can I please say, Ezzy, what it do, baby boo? What the hell? Ezzy, what it do, baby boo? That's weird. All right. Let's see. We hear me. Everything is good. Oh, okay. Right on. All right. Yeah. So I'm looking in here. Do I prefer certain type of filtration systems? You know, it really depends. I mean, when you say, do I prefer a certain type of water filtration system? You know, there's the easiest ones, which is like Everpure style, and they private label them too for Hoshizaki, Scotsman, all the different ones, but it's literally just an Everpure style cartridge, and it's super easy because it just twists in. And the cool thing about the Everpure style cartridges, if it fits your water quality, whenever the water filter plugs up, you know, because oftentimes the customers don't replace them on a regular basis, and you'll get a service call and the water filter will be plugged solid, it's really easy to bypass an Everpure filter. You just pull out one of the O-rings on the top. There's usually 2 O-rings. Pull out one of the O-rings and it'll bypass the filter. It's super easy. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's all about what's convenient and easy, but really it depends on what you're comfortable with and what you use, you know, regularly. So, all right, let's see what else we got in here. Can a fan cycle control cause premature equipment failure by them being violent on the system? You're referencing my dislike for fan cycle controls because they are violent on the system, meaning that when they bypass in, you know, mild climates like I have, because I'm in Southern California, so we don't really get super cold. So when a fan cycle control will turn off the condenser fan motor because the system pressure gets below, it'll only be off for like 2-3 seconds. Then the fan motor will turn right back on because it's mild weather outside. It's not super cold. So, you know, when it turns off, the pressures rise really fast, then it turns on, and then they go off, and then they go on, and it's just like a vicious cycle. So the fan motor's seeing high inrush every single time. Could it cause premature system failures? It's hard to say. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's very good on the motor, but I mean, to be honest with you, there's a lot of systems out there and they run just fine. So I'm going to pass the buck on that one and not, I mean, I don't like it, but is it really, really that bad? I don't like it. That's pretty much as I have to say about that. So could a variable speed fan work in place of a headmaster to control head pressure? Cyborg Sheep. Yes. That is a very, very good solution to head pressure control valves. You could do that, but turning off a condenser fan motor sometimes is not enough. Sometimes you do have to flood the condenser. So in really cold ambience, like if you go to Minnesota, Michigan, up in the north, New York's up in the really, really cold areas, you might have to have fan cycling and head pressure control valves. So, you know, simply just slowing down a condenser fan motor might not work in a really cold ambient. Now, in Southern California, where we have mild winters, yeah, that'd be a great solution. But then you have another issue to put a variable speed fan into the system. Most of the time, I mean, you can do like a cheap solution where you just put like a motor master in there, which is essentially going to slow down a motor using kind of a rheostat kind of a device. Not the greatest, and you have to be careful what type of motor you put on it, whether it's a ball bearing or another type. If you go to a true variable speed motor, maybe like an ECM or possibly a VFD driven condenser fan motor, then you have extra components added to the system. And here we speak on the West Coast and Southern California specifically, we have a horrible power grid where we have a lot of brownouts and things like that. And most buildings and locations don't have proper power conditioning. So you lose circuit boards on VFDs and different things like that quite often. So I'm still a fan of old school going with a head pressure control valve when it comes to capacity control. You know, what's the reason for a head pressure control valve? It's used in refrigeration and air conditioning systems, typically that have expansion valves and have receivers. Okay, you're not going to see this on a standard air conditioning system unless some weird engineered system. They're there to maintain a certain pressure differential across the expansion valve. Okay, the expansion valve is a metering device, especially on the older thermostatic expansion valves. Think about it this way. The expansion valve meters the refrigerant. I've used this analogy before, but if you guys stand outside with your thumb on a water hose, the water will fan out. But as you turn the water pressure down, the water doesn't go as far. The water doesn't fan out as far, okay? Because the pressure's been reduced. As you increase the pressure, the water's going to fan out and shoot farther, okay? So an expansion valve is meant to control the flow of refrigerant at a certain rate so that way you can have evaporation that occurs inside your evaporator. If that flow rate, if the refrigerant is not moving at a certain velocity, then the expansion valve can only control so much. So you have to maintain the pressure differential or maintain the proper pressure on the liquid line coming in so that way the expansion valve can meter the refrigerant properly, okay? So that's why we use a head pressure control valve or slow down or, you know, condenser fan motors or shut them off to try to maintain a pressure differential. People are going to be running into those a lot more as the weather's cooling down. And on top of that, I've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's really important that we talk about this too. Any new larger condensing units are going to be AWEF compliant refrigeration condensing units. AWEF, annual walk-in efficiency factors, is like a government federal regulation that walk-in coolers bigger than, I think it's, I don't remember the number, but walk-in coolers, bigger walk-in coolers have to meet certain energy efficiency requirements, okay, or actually, I believe it's on all walk-in coolers up to a certain size. So they have to meet certain energy efficiency requirements. And so they're doing that by changing the condensing units, making them operate at lower current draws and reducing the head pressure control valve bypass pressures and increasing the size of the condenser. So with that being said, if you go and try to take a brand new condensing unit that's an AWEF compliant condensing unit and throw it on an existing system, because sometimes we'll just do a condensing unit swap, you need to make sure that your expansion valve is sized appropriately because oftentimes they're floating the head pressure down a lot lower. So some of the head pressure control valves don't bypass until 100 PSI or 150 PSI. And that's for standard condensing units that might have 404 or, you know, some of these other newer refrigerants in it. So with that being said, if you're trying to use an existing expansion valve, you might run into problems. So that's just something to keep an eye on when you're swapping out condensing units and not changing everything else as these new regulations come out. Essentially, think about it as, you know, like the SEER rating requirements that air conditioning, like residential air conditioning systems have. I don't know what it is. What is it, like 14 SEER is the minimum requirement now, or 13 SEER or something across the United States? I think that's what it is here in California. They're kind of going the same route with refrigeration equipment too. They're trying to increase efficiency, you know, and do that kind of stuff. So with that comes some other complications that we need to concern ourselves with, you know? All right, so let me see. You know, in my recent video when I had the train package unit, and I think I kind of covered it in the video too, but I'm just going to own up to it here too. You know, I was using an insulation tester or a mega ohm meter. I was using a Fluke 1587, and using an insulation tester is new to me. You know, and I'm not afraid to show my ignorance. I'm still kind of learning with them. I've kind of pulled away or, you know, kind of avoided using an insulation tester for many years, but I kind of decided, you know what, it's something I should probably show a few times in the video. So I picked one up and I used it in the video. And, you know, some of the things that I said weren't entirely correct, while nothing that I did was completely incorrect. You know, just some of the ways that I explained certain things wasn't quite 100% accurate in some of the references that I use. But, you know, I'm a normal person. You know, I've never said that I'm the greatest and best of anything. I'm just a guy that tries to be as honest as possible and show my mistakes. And so I try to own up to the stuff as much as possible. Again, I'm learning. A bunch of people reached out to me, sent me all kinds of cool documents, told me things that I knew, told me things that I didn't know. So I feel like, you know, we all have things to learn. And it continues every single day, and nobody is the best and greatest at anything. Everybody is still learning in one way or another. There's new stuff coming out every single day. There's old stuff that people like me are just using for the first time and stuff like that. So, all right. Holy majoli. Philip, thank you so very much for that super chat. That was amazing, bud. That's amazing. Thank you. I'm dumbfounded by that. Thank you, bud. That was really, really nice of you, okay? It's a great way to support the channel. Thank you so very much, okay? Let's see what else we got going on in the chat that I'm missing. Carrier uses them on the chillers, AquaSnap, and also the train screws to prevent flooding back. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, head pressure. Yeah, I don't know. I probably walked into that one, so... Let me see what else we got going on in here. Does Measure Quick work on refrigeration side or just HVAC? Roger Betancourt. Yeah, it works on the refrigeration side, but it's still in a beta mode. Anybody can use it, but just know that it's not completely dialed in. They haven't really been focusing on the refrigeration side. So it's really not going to be too much different from the refrigeration to the air conditioning side. If you're doing supermarket refrigeration or working on cases and things like that, the refrigeration mode in Measure Quick might be a little bit more useful than someone like me that does light commercial refrigeration, walk-ins and different things like that. Even in air conditioning mode, it still gives you all the necessary information, but the refrigeration mode just kind of changes a few things. So yeah, it's definitely usable for sure. Flex Ortiz, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. Okay. Let me see what I'm missing in here. Head pressure controls can kill compressors. I know Primetime. Primetime has never been a fan of head pressure control valves. Let's see. What am I missing? I'm looking through the chat right now. What is my take on 410A being phased out in the future of refrigerant in our industry? Flex Ortiz. So refrigerants. Since before I started in HVAC, there's been several refrigerants. As I came into HVAC in the mid 90s as a kid working with my dad, and then towards the late 90s, early 2000s, officially becoming a service technician in this industry, refrigerants have changed. There's always new flavors of refrigerants coming out every single day. The best advice I can give to all of us is that assume that everything you know about the types of refrigerants that you deal with is going to change tomorrow. But the fundamentals don't change. Don't focus on refrigerant pressures, okay? Because from each flavor or each different refrigerant type, the pressures are going to change. The pressure-temperature relationship is going to change. They add other gases, their blends, their multiple mixtures, different things like that. They're multi-component refrigerants. But the temperatures don't lie when you understand how the temperatures work. So stop focusing on the pressures and focus on the temperatures. When I'm looking at my gauges, when I'm looking at Measure Quick or anything, I look at the pressures, but then I focus on the temperatures, the saturation temperatures, the saturated temperature of the refrigerant in the point at which it's being measured, whether it's the evaporator or the condenser. And that's what I focus on, because from every different type of refrigerant, those pressures are going to change, right? But if I'm working on an air conditioner that has R22 or 410A, for the most part, I'm looking for anywhere from a 40-degree coil to a 55-degree evaporator coil on the evaporator side, right? So if I just look at the saturation temperatures, it really doesn't matter if I'm working with 410 or 22. I'm looking at the temperatures, okay? So there's always going to be new refrigerants, okay? And to be honest with you, if the hippies had their way, we wouldn't have any air conditioning and we wouldn't have any refrigeration, okay? We would just be like one of these countries that just lives out of shacks and that are made out of, I don't even know. We're probably not even going to be able to, if the hippies had their way, we probably wouldn't be able to use wood or anything like that. I mean, there's always going to be people trying to do different things, okay? So, I'm not too worried about it. Change is inevitable. It's going to keep coming. Just understand that as change comes, our jobs are going to be more and more needed, right? We're going to be the technicians that know how to work on this stuff, and we have new things to learn. It's job security is what it is. Every time they release a new refrigerant, there's new ramifications from it. Oh, this refrigerant doesn't mix with this oil, so you got to change the oil. Or when you change the oil, the O-rings are degraded or whatever, and it's just more stuff for us to have to do. And you can be frustrated with that, or you can embrace that and own up to it and know that now you have job security, because now in order to change to this new refrigerant, we got to do all this different stuff, and we get to sell that to the customers. So refrigerants are always going to change. All right, let's see what else we got. What am I missing? Is work slowing down for me in Washington? It's slowing down hard, Vlad. Work is slowing a little bit. It's not dead yet, but yeah, it's definitely slowing down. The winter time is actually my favorite time because it's when I get to take a little time off work and things aren't so crazy. I still have a backlog of construction. What I call construction, like my installs and retrofit jobs. So I've got a walk-in system I need to change out that's been leaking. I've got a change out that I did let's see, I did that change out probably 4 months ago, but we replaced 5 package units on a roof because tweakers got up there and stole a bunch of copper and drain lines and everything. Well, we did that install, and then when we did that, they didn't send everything that we needed for the install. We needed full economizers for every AC. So I have 5 economizer assemblies sitting on the back of my shop. They just haven't been a priority. So we've still got to install those. We've got all kinds of install work that it's slowing down enough that we can start scheduling some of that work. But yeah, it's definitely slowing down a bit. Let me see, what else am I missing in here? Let me see. I saw some good things up in here. Hold on just a second. I already see that one. What is my opinion on the California high-speed rail project? I'm not going to get political in here. Yeah, we're not going to go into that one. So that turned into a giant political mess, so don't even want to get involved. Let's see, Dave Johnson saying that measure quick 1 second says overcharged and then 2 seconds it says undercharged. I know kind of what you're talking about, Dave. You have to really, really let the system stabilize out. Understand that when you are using something like measure quick, okay, I'm going to be honest with you, and don't take this the wrong way. I'm not flexing on anybody, but honestly, I don't really use the diagnostics in measure quick. What I use measure quick for, me personally, is to consolidate all the information. That way I can come up with my own diagnoses, okay? It puts it all in one place. I scroll between 3 pages. I look at my vitals, look at my airflow, and I say, you know what? I have really low airflow. I have really low superheat. I might be overcharged, but more than likely it's going to be an airflow issue causing the really low superheat. So, you know, and I look at it like that. I'll occasionally look at their diagnostics just to see where they're pointing me. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But let's say this too, measure quick, in all honesty, from my opinion, is really meant for residential split systems. You can use it on package units, but it's really meant for residential split systems. So if you're trying to use it on commercial package units, it's going to be a little bit hard, and some of the things aren't very practical. In a perfect world, when you're putting air probes in a package unit, you shouldn't be putting them in the side of the unit. You should be going down and putting them in the ductwork, you know, so that way you can be as far away from the evaporator coil as possible. But that's not very practical when you're working on package units. So oftentimes we'll shove it in the side of the unit. So then it might see really, really cold supply air temperatures because it's really close to the evaporator, or it might see really high discharge air temperatures when it's in heating mode, again, because it's too close to the heat exchanger. So you have to kind of look at it, and the way I preach measure quick is it's not going to do your job for you. It's just there to consolidate information and get you in the right area so that way you can come up with the diagnoses. But measure quick is only as good as the technician applying the tools to the system. If you put the liquid line temperature clamp on the discharge line and then it tells you that your subcooling's through the roof, well, that could lead you down a path that you don't even know where you're going. So you have to be a technician that understands what's going on. So in no way is measure quick there to do our jobs for us. It's just there to consolidate information, give us a helping hand, nudge us in the right direction. But we as technicians have to know how to interpolate when the information is incorrect or when something doesn't seem right. We have to be able to look and say, wait a minute, you know. There's been times that I've been working with it. There's some bugs that I found in measure quick and different things like that. And it's like, wait, what's going on here? And then you realize, oh, this is wrong, you know, so let's change some things. So, all right, let me get down to the bottom of the list. On the systems keep coming video, how close was the arcing leading to an explosion? Honestly, John Deere fan, I don't remember that video, but I don't think it was ever going to be an explosion. Yeah. Let's see. Miguel Martinez, he says there's several people on here that want to know if I can please talk about EPRs, evaporator pressure regulators. Okay, so talking about EPRs is something that I really need to kind of prepare for. I'm not going to be able to fluidly come out with that information, explaining everything explaining it properly. So I need some time to kind of prepare for those questions. So if someone does have a question like that, like the EPR, send me an email to help me remember, and I'll do some research. That way I can come out with the right information, because I know how they work, but it's a matter of explaining it properly in the way that I like to explain things. And I don't feel comfortable talking about them right now because I'll just mess everything up and confuse the hell out of everybody. Are economizers worth replacing? Most customers don't want to replace them at your job. No, Vlad. Most customers don't want to replace and or repair economizers because they're a serious money maker. The sensors always fail. The motors always fail. To be fair, the economizer manufacturers expect that the customer is going to do proper preventative maintenance. And with that being said, most of these customers don't want to do a proper preventative maintenance. Just because they have you come out monthly to clean equipment doesn't mean that they're actually paying you to clean the equipment properly. Most customers just want you there to change filters, hose coils, blow drains out, and move on. With that being said, let me cross some things off my list, and I actually want to talk about something else that I have on my list right now. So I'm going to cross these two things that I already talked about. I already talked about that one. Let me see. So someone had asked me a question. Does my service company inspect contactors on PM services? Okay. And that's a great question. So yes, my service technicians, as part of our preventative maintenance, we will open up the electrical section and look for anything scary. But the customers on any of my preventative maintenances do not pay you enough to thoroughly go through and do voltage drops and different things like that across the contactors. So essentially, when we're paid to do a preventative maintenance service on any of the customers that we do service for right now, they typically just want you to hose off the AC, blow out the drain, change the belt, open up the electrical section, make sure there's nothing melted or burnt or anything like that. Turn it on, check the temperature split across the evap and or across the return and supply side of the unit, and move on. If my customers wanted to do a proper preventative maintenance service, I could probably spend up to 8 hours per package unit thoroughly going through the unit, tightening every screw, checking current on everything, cleaning every coil, so splitting condenser coils. Most people don't. So short answer is yes, they have us check the contactors, but they don't have us go in depth, pulling covers off, looking for different things. There's not enough time typically in what they allow us to do. In a recent video, the train package unit where I said the breaker was tripped, I said some words in there and explained my process of going through a system that has a tripped breaker. And I want to stress to everybody out there, I suggest that you never, ever reset a breaker until you have checked the system out as best as possible for direct shorts to ground, for locked up motors, for obvious electrical shorts and different things like that, okay? There's nothing worse than turning on a breaker and having it blow again because you're potentially causing damage somewhere. I've told a story before. I'll tell it again. I'll do a paraphrase version. I was working at a golf course. It was an emergency service call in the middle of the night. I went out there. The fuses were blown. I put in new fuses and I turned on the disconnect switch, and all of a sudden the fuses blew again, but it actually wasn't the fuses. What blew was the main breaker downstairs. So you have a main breaker that controlled an entire panel, and I went to go reset that main breaker and it wouldn't reset. The breaker actually broke internally when it had tripped. Now, was it my fault that the main breaker had broke? No, because it was probably inevitably going to break eventually, right? There was something going on with it, but could I have possibly prevented it from happening that night? Yes, by checking the system out before I replaced the fuses and turned on the disconnect. What ended up happening was the system had a grounded compressor, so it instantaneously shorted to ground and tripped the breaker, okay? I learned a lesson. And that golf course had to go without an entire electrical panel for half the building for an entire weekend because it was a weird 480 volt breaker. The electrician couldn't get it, whatever. But that could have been prevented. And I learned a lesson. And from that point forward, I have always gone in, and before I reset breakers, you always look. You check things to ground. You spin the motors. You look for obvious issues, okay? So I showed examples of that in my recent video where I went up and I went through everything as best as possible before I reset the breaker. And I found some issues that, in my opinion, could have caused the breaker to trip. Now, it's also possible that the breaker was just bad. It happens, okay? But the way that I look at things is, in my head, a breaker doesn't just trip and a breaker doesn't just go bad. So I always assume that there's something in the system that's wrong. So I do my best to check out the system. And then if I can't find anything, then you do the 1, 2, 3, please don't blow up, and you turn it on and see what happens, okay? So I had a commenter And I want to address this, and please do not take offense to this if you are watching this stream right now, okay? The guy that commented on this, I'm not going to say his name, but he told me I'm paraphrasing, that my closing words are way too long, okay? And that I should probably research my analytics. Analytics are a way, as a content creator on YouTube, I can look and see, I can see all kinds of things. I can see, the gender of people that watch my videos, the times that people watch my videos, how long people watch my videos. So anyways, the commenter was telling me that I should probably investigate the analytics and see how long people are watching my videos and see if people are actually watching the closing words on my videos. Okay. So that's a great point that the commenter was making. Okay. But the difference between myself and other YouTube creators is I don't really make these videos following YouTube's best practices. Okay. I make these videos bottom line for my employees. Okay. And I make these videos for you guys, but I have useful information in there. Okay. So just because majority of you guys are not watching the closing words, I'm not going to change the way that my channel is, because in my opinion, sometimes some of the most valuable information is in the closing words. I address my mistakes. I address different things. So yes, there's going to be sometimes that the closing words are longer than the video. It's okay. If you guys don't like it, if the person that's watching doesn't like it, again, I don't mean any offense, but I'm going to continue to make the videos the way that I make them. I beat to the tune of my own drum. I don't really follow what people say I should do. Okay. I have sponsors for this channel, but those sponsors are the type of sponsors, Refrigeration Technologies and Sporlin, that don't demand things of me. They don't require things of me. They like the way that I do things. I've turned down other sponsors and avoided other sponsors because I know that it's going to get to the point that they're like, oh, you need to address this and you need to address that. That's not how I want to run my channel. This is my channel and I'm going to do it the way that I like to do it. Now, I'm always open to feedback. So don't let me deter people from emailing me. And again, I mean no offense to the commenter that sent that. I appreciate your feedback and I appreciate your concern, okay? But understand that if you don't like the closing words, it's really easy just to not watch them. When the video ends, hit stop and move on. There's no reason to be upset or frustrated with me because the video is going to keep going on. Just stop watching and move on. Or if you don't like my channel, you're free to move on. Okay. But again, I don't mean offense, but I'm going to make these videos the way that I see fit. And in my opinion, there's really valuable information in the closing words. And also, I also do things differently. And I'm going to tell you guys something that I've never really told people. Only certain people know this. And I don't do this all the time, but sometimes in the closing words, I give things away. Okay. I find it ironic and kind of funny. Sometimes on these live streams, after I say the live stream's over, sometimes I actually come back on for another 20 minutes. After the music plays and everything, I'll just randomly come on and I'll do giveaways, okay? Just because I kind of find it funny. The people that hang around and actually watch are like the core group of people that actually do that stuff. So I'm not saying that I'm going to do that every single time, but I've done it a lot in the past. So I always just kind of do things my own way. I'm different, or maybe I'm normal and everybody else is different. I don't know. How do you say that? All right, so I'm going to get to the chat and see what I'm missing in here. And oh, let's see, there's another one. I already answered that question. Looking to see what I'm missing. Right on, bud. JM, I appreciate you staying till the end, man. That's awesome. So, Scott, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. Yes, I do plan on going to the iHacky trade show in November, which is a local trade show, HVAC trade show in Pasadena, California. I do plan on being there. I usually go early in the morning and stay for majority of the day. I also plan on being at the AHR trade show in Las Vegas this coming January. And then I also, either virtually or in person, will be at the HVACR training symposium at the Kalos headquarters in Claremont, Florida, in February of this year. So yes, I do plan on being at the iHacky trade show though. Yes. Definitely send me a message, Scott, and we'll try to meet up if you're going to be there. So, I had a commenter ask me a question. Do I have a recommendation for what school is the best school? I have no idea where the commenter's at, okay? But no, I don't necessarily have a recommendation for a trade school. I am going to say this. First off, I fully believe in a trade school. I believe that as a service technician, you should go to trade school while you're working or before you work, okay? I also feel like you should do a proper apprenticeship and understand that you're not going to learn everything in trade school and you're not going to learn everything in an apprenticeship. But if you put the two together, along with working in the field, you're going to learn a lot, okay? I want everybody out there that's considering going to trade school to be very careful about the trade schools that you choose, okay? Because there is some really bad schools and there's some really good schools. There's really good for-profit schools. There's really good non-profit schools, okay? It's really a gamble. But I will say, if you go to a trade school and there's kids in your classroom that clearly are not doing the work, are not pulling their weight, are not, you know, that should be out of the class, but they don't kick them out. A lot of the times those are going to be for-profit trade schools because they're literally only concerned about money. But not every for-profit school is like that, okay? But there's a good majority of them that really are concerned about the money. Even in some of the community college programs, which are the not-for-profit schools, there's some that won't get rid of students, which kind of frustrates me, okay? I believe that if you go to a trade school and you're not cutting it, I think you should be out. I don't think you should be in there wasting the teacher's time and taking away from the time that each of the students gets, you know, if you're just wasting time, you know, like I feel like schools should be able to kick you out. So do your research on trade schools. Call the local service companies in your area if you want to get into the trade and ask them what schools they recommend. Okay. Even if you're not going to go work for that company, just call the companies and say, hey, I'm a local kid and I want to get into trade school. I'd love to possibly apply at your company someday, but in the meantime, I want to get started in trade school. Do you have any that you recommend? And find out what schools the local companies recommend. They'll answer your questions. You know, and to be honest with you, a lot of companies will hire a technician before they go to trade school. Like in the past, even myself, I was working before I went to trade school, and then I went to night school at a local community college and took night classes in HVAC and learned HVAC. I worked during the day and learned at night, and that worked great for me. So that's one of the plus sides to community college style trade schools, because oftentimes you don't have to pay up front. You don't have a large commitment. You have, you know, you pay per unit basically. So if you're going to take 4 classes this semester, you pay for the 4 classes and that's it. So you're not out $30,000 at once or whatever. Because I've seen trade schools cost as much as $15,000 all the way to $30,000. So it can be rather difficult, you know. So just be cautious about paying that much money unless you're really going to get a great education. So, all right. Let me see what else we got going on in the chat. Truth is truth. You said you plan on running a GoPro for your training of apprentices. Oh, right on, bud. Thank you very much, man. You know, a lot of people will comment and tell me to use a GoPro that I can free my hands and diagnose better and different things like that. But I actually have an issue. I get motion sickness, and strapping a GoPro to my head, it just doesn't really work for me because when I'm editing it, it's bouncing around. Now, granted, some of the new GoPros, like I have the newer fancy ones and they have image stabilization, but still it's just not very fun for me to edit those. Occasionally I'll use my GoPro. And I'm not saying anybody shouldn't. I think it's great that you're going to use a GoPro. For me, it's hard to edit those videos, so I can't use a GoPro. So in my recent video too, I was working on a train package unit, and at the end of the video, I was showing the system vitals, and the suction and discharge pressure of the second stage was rather high. And I kind of addressed that in the video, but I maybe didn't spend enough time on it. I believe that the reason why the suction and discharge pressures were on the high end of the scale. Now, they weren't off the scale of what Measure Quick was saying they should be. They were right at the top end versus the first stage was on the money. I believe that the inner condenser is dirty. That is a split row condenser on that big train 15-ton pack. Actually, I think it was an 18-ton package unit. That's a big split condenser, even though it doesn't look like it. There's a second row of condenser. So you have to take the top off the unit, pull the condenser apart, and clean the inside of it. And then also the evaporator was also dirty on the top of the evaporator, which is the second stage. So I actually recommended to the customer that we get in there, properly split the condenser, and clean the evaporator. It hasn't been approved yet, but I'm sure we'll get to it here in a bit. So let me get to the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Let's see. Miguel Martinez said that I learned from the best, my dad. Yes, I did learn from my dad, and let's address that too. So my dad was an old school mechanic. He's an old school technician. Some would say that he was a hack, okay? Because I was taught certain things that today wouldn't fly. I was taught to charge an air conditioner by looking at pressures. I've said this a bunch of times. We used to work on a lot of R22 package units that had fixed orifice metering devices, carrier units, and I remember being taught how to charge that unit and how to check the charge. And what I was told was you put your gauges on it, you take the panels off the condenser area, and you drive the head pressure up to 275 psi. If your head pressure wasn't 275, then I was told to take the panel and cover the condenser and block off the airflow, or cover the condenser fan motor as it's blowing the air out and block off the airflow until my head pressure got up to 275 psi. And then I was told whenever I was at 275 psi, my suction pressure should be 65 psi. Okay. Now, clearly today we know that that is not correct, but okay, things were different in the 80s and early 90s. The trade was different. Equipment was forgiving and you could get away. It was beer can cold days. Okay. That's how things were. People got by. I'm not saying my dad was a bad service technician. My dad was an amazing service technician because he did with what he had and he got equipment working and he was able to make it operate. Now, was it perfect? Was it efficient? No, but the equipment was also 8-SEER equipment, so it wasn't efficient to begin with. Okay. You had a lot of room in the system, you know, to like, it's not working the greatest, but it's cooling. But something that my dad taught me was integrity. That was a big thing. And my dad taught me a lot of other good things too. Okay. The point I'm trying to make is nobody's perfect and we can all learn. And it's about how we take criticism and how we adjust the way that we do things once we realize that we're not doing things correctly. I came up in a time where I talk about my mistakes all the time. I made huge mistakes. I can remember ruining parts, ruining components, misdiagnosing stuff, all kinds of things. The customers were very forgiving back then. They're not very forgiving these days. And the equipment is also not forgiving at all. Okay. The equipment nowadays will break down when it's not perfect. Okay. Back then, you could get by with doing things, you know? But I learned integrity from my dad. I've told this story before too. I can remember working with my dad and watching him throw parts at a piece of equipment and then none of it fixing it. And then when he found the part that fixed the equipment, and then we'd be downstairs writing up the bill and I'd be looking at the bill and I can remember being really young and I'm like, Dad, why didn't you charge for all the parts that you put on there? And, you know, I remember the first time he told me this, he says, because none of those things fixed it. And I only charged him for the part that fixed it. But he didn't go taking off the old parts. He already had them on there. And he always taught me that you never sell used components. Once you put something in the system, it's there. Now, you may not be able to charge the customer for it, but they got it because you didn't know how to diagnose it. And that's the way you got to the point that you got to. Okay. So I learned integrity. I learned lots of things. And I also became the technician that I am today because I saw certain things. Like I can remember asking my dad a question like, hey, how does this work? And he'd be like, yeah, you know, ask your instructor at school. You know, and it's like, okay, you know, like that wasn't really the answer. I wanted to hear it from my dad, but honestly, he didn't know how it worked, but it was okay. Again, I learned to dive deeper into things. I learned to be a person like, you know, we'd be working on stuff and I'd be like, this just doesn't seem right. You know, pre 1992. Okay. Pre EPA laws and different things like that. I can remember cleaning condensers and blowing out drains with R22. All right. It didn't seem right to me, but you know, and so I started researching, being like, hey, this isn't right. We're not supposed to do this, you know? Oh, okay, we need to do these things. And I changed policies and procedures and we built things up and we changed the way that we did service. We evolved, okay? I learned everything from my dad and I have no regrets. And my dad is my best friend, you know? I mean, we still work together and we've grown together and he's learned that, you know, things are different now and things are less forgiving. So he trusts me when I say this is not how this works anymore, or this is how we're not going to do things. We're going to do this way, or, you know, so I have nothing to say to my dad, but thank you, because he made me the person that I am today. All right. Let's get to the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Let's go down to the bottom. Do I know a quality tech in Los Angeles? I don't know, bud. Let me see. Am I missing anything in here? And yes, truth is truth. My dad is a good man. Yes, he is. Dave Johnson is saying Dick Wurr's refrigeration for the AC technician. I don't know what he's referencing there, but yes, there's a new version of commercial refrigeration for air conditioning technicians by Dick Wurr's. It's the 4th edition. This is an amazing book. You know, I've been preaching this book since the 1st edition. I will tell anybody that wants to learn refrigeration coming from the air conditioning side to check out that book. It does a great job of explaining things. And I got to give props to Dick Wurz, because if you open up the forward in that book, he actually says thank you to me in that book. And that was really cool. That was really, someone called me one day and they're like, congratulations on the book. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, in Dick Ware's new book, he's like, he mentioned you. And I go, I didn't know that, you know. And like, you open it up and he says thank you to myself and Brian Orr for the way that we're doing things on the internet. That was a really cool feeling to get that acknowledgement from someone as awesome. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dick Wurz in Florida 2 years ago. Really nice guy, very nice gentleman, soft spoken, but really, really nice, likes to talk, and just a very approachable person. Really, really cool dude to meet for sure. I'm hoping I get to meet him at the Kalos event this next coming year too. So, all right. I get this question a lot of times. When I'm soldering drain lines, oftentimes you will see me solder the drain line and then take flux on an acid brush and wipe the solder to make it look pretty. Okay, why do I do that? It's an old plumber's trick that I was taught. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. It works for me. It just makes the joint look really pretty when you're done. Also, one of the things that I have to address, it is so important that people understand this. If you are doing plumbing solder and you're using flux, or even using flux on dissimilar metals that you're using silver solder on, right? You need to understand that you need to wipe the flux off when you're done. The flux, the purpose of the flux is it's an acid compound that cleans the pipe and gives a place for the solder to bond with the metals, okay? So the flux is there to clean it for you, but you also need to clean it yourself. It's there to get it extra clean so that way the solder can penetrate properly and deeply into the metals and make a good bond. But when you're done soldering the drain lines, whether it be plumbing or whether it be the flux that you're using on, you know, normal copper to brass or whatever, using silver solder, you need to clean that flux off. So always take a wet towel, wipe off all the remaining flux, especially on the plumbing solder. That flux becomes acidic, it'll turn green and start to cause pinhole leaks and different things like that. So as much as possible, even when I'm doing drain lines and different things like that, I'm always going to take a wet towel and wipe off the joints, wipe off any excess flux. And then because I'm a nutcase, I actually take sandpaper and sand up the joints to make them look pretty too. You know, and I'm just kind of crazy with that kind of stuff. Let's see what we got going on in here. I just saw... what the heck is that? Bishop of Hexen, thanks so much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. I really appreciate that support. So if anybody's interested or anybody wants to know what that is, YouTube has a way to support the channel on a monthly basis, and that's what Bishop of Hexen 192 did. He became a monthly channel supporter. When you become a channel supporter, you can tell who are the channel supporters because they have my little snowflake icon next to their name. So Dave Johnson is a channel supporter, and Ike was in here earlier. Ike is a channel supporter. There's anybody that has the little snowflake, little asterisk looking thing next to their name is a channel supporter. It's just a way for someone to support the channel on a monthly basis. You can choose different levels. You can also support the channel via Patreon, via PayPal. There's links in the show notes of every single video on different ways to support the channel. The easiest way to support this channel though, guys, the simplest, easiest way is just watch my video from beginning to end without skipping through anything. That's the easiest way to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra except for a little bit of your time. That's the simplest way. In my recent video that I did the dishwasher repair and the drain pan repair, why in the heck did I repair that drain pan? That unit was trash. It should have been thrown away. It was an old R22 unit. Why would I'm doing the customer a disservice by not changing it out? Okay, those are some of the comments that I got. Bottom line, the customer is king. Okay, I talk to my customers. I deal with all kinds of commercial, big giant customers, and they don't want to change the equipment. Okay, first and foremost, in California, it is ridiculously expensive. Sean S., thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is amazing. Thank you, bud. Great way to support the channel. Thank you. I really appreciate you. Okay, you guys don't have to do that, but thank you so very much. So, you know, it's all about what the customers want. My customers oftentimes don't want to change equipment. Okay, here in California, it is a crazy nightmare to properly change equipment. If you pull permits and do everything right, it's nuts what the hoops they make you jump through. I'm going to tell you guys a story. I told this a while back. I have an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, Vlad, this is a, what is this? This is, Vlad asked what I'm drinking. It is a AleSmith English style brown ale. It's a San Diego based brewery called AleSmith. It's their nut brown. This is, I like brown ales. That's my favorite. So very, very good. My other favorite would be the Rogue Hazelnut Brown. That's my other one that I like too. As you can see, I like the English style brown ales. Not an IPA fan at all. You know, I talk to my customers and I give them the feedback and they make the decisions. But I was going to tell you the story about a friend of mine that called me one day and he's like, hey, I'm changing out a walk-in at a customer right now. And the city got involved. And he goes, have you ever heard this? The city. So he's changing out an entire walk-in, the box and the evaporator coil and the condenser, right? And the city got involved. They made the customer fix the fire sprinkler systems. They made the customer fix the alarm system. They made the customer fix the ceiling tiles in the building, in the kitchen, and the other end of the building. They wanted them to fix floor tiles, all kinds of stuff. So basically, the health department was the one that got in there and started making them, right? And this is where the hypocrisy comes in. The health department has been inspecting that restaurant for 20, 30 years. Every, 2-3 months, they come in there and do random inspections, check the restaurant out. But when the customer tried to replace equipment, they made them bring the entire building up to code. That's the hypocrisy of how things work. So most of the customers either don't want to pull permits in California or they just don't even want to get involved, because if you try to change equipment and you don't pull a permit and you get caught, then they throw the book at you. And so most customers just want to keep repairing the equipment because they got to spend $5,000-$6,000 doing whatever, changing compressors or whatever. But to replace a piece of equipment, it's pretty easy to say that whatever the cost of a package unit is for me, the contractor, it's probably going to cost the customer up to 3 times as much with labor and installation costs and permits and all that time stuff. So, it's not unheard of for a 10-ton package unit to cost the customer in excess of $20,000 because of how crazy the requirements are for them to do things properly. So a lot of times they don't want to replace equipment and they just want to keep fixing it. On another note, I just had a conversation with one of my best customers the other day. And I think I said this on my last live stream too. And I called them up and I said, hey, and this is a giant corporation. I said, hey, here's the deal. I got restaurants across the United States. And I go, I just want to give you guys the option. I said, I've been using R22 refrigerant, and R22 refrigerant has tripled, if not quadrupled, if not gone up even higher than that. I said, it's stupid expensive. And I go, we need to do a compressor change out for you guys. Would you like me to use an alternative refrigerant? And he goes, well, what are the ramifications of using the alternative refrigerants? And I said, minor efficiency loss, but there's a couple hoops you have to jump through, some things you might run into. And these are the things. And he goes, well, what's the cost comparison? And I go, to change this compressor and not use R22 will cost you X number of dollars. And the difference with using R22, and I think it was, I don't know, whatever, it was going to cost them an extra $1,500 to use R22 refrigerant. And they said, you know what? Stick with R22. We'd rather keep it the way the manufacturer had it. That way we don't have to jump through any hoops. That way it makes it easier to work on in the future. So I'm giving my customers all the information. I'm telling them they're getting rid of it. The prices are going up, all this different stuff. And I do this almost yearly. And most of them come back to me and say, nah, just keep using what belongs in there because it's easier and we don't have to deal with headaches, any ramifications, no efficiency loss, no anything. I'm giving the customer the information and giving them the tools and they're making the decision. So I'm going to continue using R22. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Is it hard to get the equipment these days because of shortages? Yeah, there's definitely some issues with equipment shortages. I think we ordered a package unit for one of my restaurants back in May or June. And back then we were told that they wouldn't even start building the unit until October of this year. So yeah, it's difficult to get equipment for sure. Covered that one. Let me look at the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Brad Taylor, thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate the channel support right there, bud. The super chat said, you seen me on Facebook. I'm not a YouTube star, but thank you very much, man. I really, really appreciate it. I just try to share the little bit of knowledge that I have with people, good and bad. I share my mistakes and I share the triumphs and I try to show people, hey, these are the mistakes that I made, and just trying to share the little bit of knowledge that I have. That's the whole point of this channel. So, Vlad is saying that he talked to a parts house guy in his area, and he said someone just bought $40,000 of R22 for a supermarket rack system. You know, on the supermarket side, changing refrigerant, so $40,000 of refrigerant, that's a lot, right? But in the grand scheme of it, the amount of work on a rack system that has to go into that system to change over to an alternative refrigerant is significant. And if, you know, sometimes they have to do what they have to do. The system might be down. And if it's completely down, they have more than $40,000 worth of product that's going to be ruined. So they got to fix it. You know, they're probably going to get on the roadmap for retrofit to, you know, an alternative refrigerant, but there's a lot of work that has to go into that. Older R22 systems had mineral oil in them. You have line sizing issues. You have rubber seals, O-rings all throughout the system. You have set points that have to be adjusted on the EPRs and everything like that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's not as simple as refrigerant manufacturers, not all of them, but some of them make it sound so easy to convert to another alternative refrigerant. What I would challenge you guys to do is go find the tech installation information. Each refrigerant manufacturer has them. Go to their websites of insert name of refrigerant manufacturer and say, what are the requirements to change to the refrigerants? Okay, to change to an R22 alternative. And majority of the time, they're going to have installation instructions. And if you go to the bottom of the installation instructions, if it's an R22 alternative refrigerant, right? Oftentimes in the beginning, they'll say, yeah, it works okay without changing the oil. Yeah, it does this. Yeah, it does that. But usually down in the bottom in the fine print, it says works best with polyester oil. Okay, for best case scenario, change to polyester oil. But in the beginning of their tech documents, they'll tell you that, oh yeah, it works. Yeah, it'll work fine without changing the oil. See, they mislead you, some of them, not all of them, but some of them mislead you to get you to buy their refrigerants. And then you realize the ramifications of it after the fact. I made mistakes. I learned the hard way, changing over to a refrigerant. It wasn't necessarily the refrigerant's problem, right? But I, maybe 5-10 years ago, I wanted to change a train compressor. It was a 10-ton compressor and a train 15-ton package unit. And we had to change the 10-ton compressor. And I decided, without even asking the customer, I decided that I was going to change to an R22 alternative. At the time, R22 wasn't even that expensive, but it was, you know, being phased out and it was going to get expensive, right? So I talked to my supply house and they said, you know what, this is the most popular refrigerant. It was 427A. Okay. So I said, okay, cool. Give me the refrigerant stuff. And I kind of read the documentation and said, cool, this shouldn't be a big deal. No oil change necessary. It says right on there. Okay, cool. So I go and I change the compressor, put in a brand new Train 3D scroll compressor. If you guys haven't ever done that, first off, I needed a crane to get the compressor onto the roof. Then we get it in the unit. We get it brazed in. We start it up. And we put 427A in it. It still had mineral oil in it, but it says on the documentation that mineral oil was fine. Started it up. 2 days later, I got a call. I went back out there because the AC wasn't working. The compressor was locked up and bad. Brand new compressor. I'm like, what the heck? Called the manufacturer, got a replacement compressor, changed out the replacement compressor. I don't know what happened, you know. Put the new compressor in there. 3-4 days later, compressor went bad. Okay, by then I'm losing my mind. What did I do wrong? I looked at all my documentation. I checked all the information. I'm doing everything right. Then I found a tech document from Train saying do not use alternative refrigerants. And I realized that it wasn't necessarily 427A's problem, but with the Train compressor, there's issues with the alternative refrigerants and they need that oil to travel with the refrigerant. If you're using one of the alternatives that doesn't necessarily work properly and the POE or the mineral oil doesn't travel with it like it did with the old R22, then the compressor's not going to get lubricated properly. And I learned the hard way that you don't want to use, certain refrigerants with certain compressors without doing more than what the installation instructions from the manufacturer of that refrigerant say. You really need to dig into how those compressors work. How does the bearings get lubricated? Different things like that. So I made a mistake and I learned the hard way. And, that one ended up being a rather expensive mistake for me because, I had to eat the cost of that compressor. So ended up working something out with the customer and they ended up replacing the package unit. But what I did was I said, all right, here's the deal. I took the cost of that compressor, I absorbed it, and I sold them a package unit, and then we were good to go. Problem solved. Customer was happy. I was happy. I did have to eat the cost of the compressor, but it's all good. Life happens. All right, let's see what I got going on in the chat that I'm missing. It's just the 3D scroll compressors you need to be careful with. So, but it was a horrible way to find out for sure. Yeah, just like Justin said. So, let me see what else we got going on. What am I missing? Advice for a school district technician. What do you mean advice? I mean, just learn as much as you can, man. Here's the cool thing about school districts. The school districts, oftentimes the pace is a little bit slower. Obviously, you know, usually, I'm not saying every district is like this, but the pay is usually not like top of the scale, but you usually get great benefits that most other people don't get. But the cool thing about school districts is oftentimes you're on your own and you have time to learn. You can learn on the job. You can tinker with things. You can play with things. You're going to be doing a lot of preventative maintenances, and you know you get time to get familiar with the equipment. So just take this time and relish in it. Learn everything you can. You get to learn with your hands on equipment. It's really cool. So feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. We can talk a little bit more about that. Okay. In the package unit, the train package unit that I had a question, and guys, this is a rather rudimentary question. It's a very basic question, but it's okay. I'm okay with answering questions from homeowners, from business owners, from technicians, from people that don't know a lot. That's fine. I'm okay with questions, okay? Feel free to keep sending them. But I had a very simple question. The technician wanted to know in my recent video in the train package unit, why was there two different size compressors in it? Why was one really big and one really small? Well, they do that for better capacity control. So in that particular unit, that was a train 18-ton unit. So you had a 10-ton compressor and then you had an 8-ton compressor. First stage and second stage. So oftentimes they will turn on first stage, and if it doesn't meet cooling demands, then they will turn on second stage, which adds more BTU capacity to the system. Sometimes you have fancy units that have multiple compressors where there might be 4 compressors, there might be variable speed compressors and different things like that. It's all about staging the equipment. So worst case scenario, you can turn on both compressors at the same time and it has massive cooling capacity, but sometimes you don't always need that. If the building's down to temperature and you're just maintaining temperature, you might just run on first stage. First stage is just one compressor typically, okay? So, or sometimes they might have one compressor that has unloaders in it, and it's a way to reduce the capacity of the compressor. So it's all about maintaining efficiency and not just turning things on, off, you know? In a best case scenario, your air conditioner runs for a long time if it's sized correctly, and it cools the space while dehumidifying the space at the same time. So, you know, you don't want short on, off, because that can lead to premature compressor failure, poor dehumidification, and different things like that. So let me look at something real quick. Make sure I don't have a service call. I don't think it's an emergency service call. Nope, no big deal. Okay, cool. And then let's look at something. It's getting really hot in my office, so I need to see if my thermostat has been adjusted with. My family is notorious for thinking that 72 degrees is way too cold, and so they go and adjust it. So just to mess with them, I'm going to go ahead and adjust it down to 70 degrees and cool myself off. So, all right. Let me see. What do we got? Marat, thank you so very much for becoming a channel supporter, man. I really appreciate it. Marat is another YouTuber. He has YouTube videos on there. Marat, how's that swaging tool? Do you still have that swaging tool? Do you still like it? Marat won the, not won, but I did a Christmas giveaway video, or holiday giveaway video, right, to be politically correct, last year, and Marat was one of the people that got randomly selected, and I believe he won a Hillmore swaging tool, which I was kind of jealous of because I kind of want one of those. And you know, it's funny, I said I wanted one of those, but I never bought one for myself. All right, let me see. Cyborg says he thought that someone installed the wrong compressor. Yeah, no, not the case. It's just different capacities. So, let's see. Kontiki, you're looking for a quart of 20 microfarad capacitor fluid. Let me know when you find that. Do me a favor and send me an email because I've been looking for capacitor fluid too. Let me know if you get the tool to go ahead and fill the capacitors because I've been looking for that. Obviously, guys, we're joking, but all right. So, Devin had asked a question in the HVAC Overtime YouTube group, and it was a really good question about tips for reading schematics and learning how to read schematics better. Devin, learning how to read schematics, and anybody else that's interested in this too, it can be a complex process, but the easiest way to start the basic fundamentals of schematics, first off, is to set yourself up a trainer board or go to school where they have trainer boards for you. Start with a basic circuit. All that you need to do is have light switches and, you know, a light bulb or something like that, and understanding ladder diagrams. But if you want to understand the logic and the thought process of how a schematic works, start out with water, okay? Start out with water flowing from one side to the other side. Don't put a load in there. Don't put a light bulb. Just think of water, okay? You have water coming in on a pipe and there's a valve. The valve can be a switch. When the valve is open, the water doesn't flow through. When the valve is closed, the water flows through. That gives you the general understanding of how, you know, schematics work, okay? Different manufacturers can have really easy schematics or really difficult schematics, but when it's understanding schematics, it's easiest to start with understanding how water is going to flow, okay? Then when you start getting into switches, that's the next thing you're going to introduce. Obviously, you know, if you can, you want to set up a trainer board with, you know, start with 24 volts or something like that, that you're not going to hurt yourself with. Wire in a transformer, plug it into the wall, make sure it has a resettable breaker on it, and start testing things. And understand that if you have a switch and you test across a switch when you're testing voltages, you test from one side of the switch to the other. If the switch is open, you're going to see voltage. You're going to see 24 volts if it's a 24 volt circuit. If the switch is closed, you're typically not going to see voltage, okay? Because electricity is going to take the path of least resistance. It's going to go through the circuit and it's going to go to the load and then go to ground eventually. But start with that and work your way down. I don't have a specific book that I would recommend. I mean, you really need your hands on something and someone explaining, and then just understand that electricity is always going to try to go to ground. It's always trying to go to ground. That's the most important thing to understand, and you don't want it to go to ground before it's supposed to. All right. So feel free to send me an email again, hvacrvideos@gmail.com, if you want to talk about it more. Why is it that I always use copper on drains? Is it a requirement in California to use copper on drains? I kid you not, that is one of the most common questions I get. No, it is not a requirement to use copper on drains. I like copper because it lasts forever unless tweakers get up there and steal it, okay? But I will say in most areas, it is a requirement that condensate be plumbed into the sewer, okay? In most of my areas that I'm in, we are not allowed to just drain copper or to just drain condensate onto the roof, okay? All of our storm drains go to the ocean here. Sometimes they get processed in sewage plants, sometimes they don't. So they always want condensation going into the drains, the sewage system, so that way it can make its way to a sewage plant because even at sewage plants, they either repurpose and clean that water and then repipe it into the potable water system. So there's actually places in California that drink sewage because they clean it to the point that it's cleaner than bottled water, and then they repipe it in. Sometimes they do it to landscaping. There is some areas that they actually plumb it into the normal water system. But inevitably, all the water eventually is going to go into the ocean. So they don't want water making it to the ocean without being treated. So they want everything plumbed into the sewers so that way it can make it to sewage treatment plants to be properly treated before it makes its way to the ocean. So we don't necessarily have a requirement that we use copper for our drain lines, but we do have a requirement that those drain lines be plumbed into the sewer. As far as why I use copper is because copper lasts a lot longer than PVC. We have a lot of UV exposure here in California, and that sun is brutal, and technicians dragging hoses across the roof, PVC lines become brittle and they shatter. So you can drag a hose across a PVC drain line and boom, it'll just explode into pieces, and then it's just a mess. So copper lasts, right? That's why I use copper all the time. Chris had asked me a great question. How in the heck do you know if there is a Schrader under the pressure control? Okay, if you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And Chris, the answer to your question is you don't. There's no way to know, okay? Some people say, just loosen the pressure control a little bit and see if it sprays out, you know? That's not a very good way to do it, okay? In a perfect world, the manufacturers label pressure controls. And there is some manufacturers that will label the pressure controls. Ironically, they'll label them with a piece of paper, and that piece of paper gets wet, and over time it goes away. Oftentimes it'll say Schrader under control. There's really no way to know. I feel like we should have a standard in the industry. That would be great if we had a standard where you know, connections with Schrader's have paint or something on them. Like that should be something that we do, but we don't. So, Jimmy emailed me asking for help on a reach-in that won't come down to temperature. Jimmy has replaced the compressor and the TXV, but it still won't pull below 30 degrees, and he wanted to know if I have any advice. Okay, first and foremost, from your email, Jimmy, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm guessing that why did you change the compressor in the first place? Okay, that's my question. Why? And why did you change the TXV in the first place? Is it because you couldn't figure out what was going on? In a situation like that, and again, I'm not judging you, I'm just asking you, okay? I'm being that other person looking from the outside looking in. Why did you change the compressor? Because it clearly didn't fix the problem, or was the compressor bad, okay? But even if it was bad, maybe it was bad because the system's running and it's not working right. So I would investigate whether or not that compressor that's in the system is actually correct. Is the system designed for that compressor? Is the condenser sized right? Is the evaporator sized right? Is the expansion valve sized right? Okay. Do a load calculation on the box. That's where I would start in that situation. And then I'm going to use basics. It's running. I don't know what refrigerant it is. I don't know what pressures it is, but I'm going to start with analyzing the system as a whole. Step back and look at the big picture. Before you go any further, is it the right compressor? That's where you're going to start. Okay. What is the system supposed to be? A freezer? Has it always been a freezer? You know, there's all kinds of information and things that can lead you into that direction. So I could probably help you out a little bit more, Chris, if you give me some more context. I need to know what kind of a system it is. Give me pictures of it. Send it to my email again, like you sent this question. And then we can talk a little bit more about it. But when it comes to these really difficult problems, step back and think about it for a minute. Okay. Is it possible that that compressor was never the right compressor to begin with? You know, and kind of address things accordingly from that point. Does the system have a receiver? It should if it has an expansion valve. Is the sight glass clear? If it doesn't have a sight glass and it has an expansion valve and a receiver, put a sight glass on it. Let's start checking from there, and then we'll kind of figure out a little bit more. Okay. Let me get to my list. I already answered that question. Okay, so this was an interesting statement that I had, and I'm not going to say the person's name, and don't take offense to what I'm saying, but you know, I'm just going to kind of analyze from the outside looking in the comment that you sent me. So you sent me an email, and it kind of says, and I'm paraphrasing, that you work for a company for a very long time and you work your butt off and you feel like you're the only person working at the company. And again, I'm paraphrasing your email. You feel like the bosses, the owner, whoever it may be, the people in the office are putting in a few hours a day and you're putting in 10 hours a day, and that's frustrating you. Okay. First off, you need to understand something, that as a business owner, okay, again, outside looking in, I'm just giving you my perspective. My technicians may bill out more hours than I put in. Okay. But I'm oftentimes putting in way more hours than I ever imagine. Okay. Now, I'm not saying your company's the same, but just remember, there's always another side to the story. Okay. Also, at the same time, is it really the employee's business if there's people in the office not working while he's working? Okay. I mean, he's doing his job. He's there to work. Maybe they're giving you the hours. Okay. I don't know your situation, and clearly you're the only person that knows it. If you feel like it's time for a change, then maybe it's time for a change. But remember, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And remember, sometimes you might just be frustrated. You know, maybe it's you, maybe it's not you, but sometimes people just feel like everybody should be pulling the same weight as they are. But, you know, maybe you're the technician that isn't pulling enough weight. Maybe you're taking too long on calls. Again, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just looking at the other end. Okay. I always look at things that way. Even when I'm frustrated with someone, if I'm pissed off at someone, I start to think, okay, I try to imagine it from their eyes. Okay. Looking at me from the outside. Okay. What am I doing wrong? How can I change things? So I always evaluate things looking at myself first. If I'm frustrated with someone, how can I do things differently so that way I'm not frustrated with them anymore? Sometimes I can't. Sometimes they're just a jerk. Okay. So remember, if you feel like you're working too much, maybe you need a break. Maybe you need to talk. The biggest thing here, bud, and is that you need to communicate. Okay. You need to communicate with management. If you have resentment or you're upset about things that they're doing or they're not doing, you need to communicate it with them, because they need to know that you're frustrated. Maybe they don't even know. Okay. Maybe they think that you're happy that you're working so much. So it's all about communication, and remember to step back and look at everything and analyze it from the outside in. Again, I'm not saying that you're right or you're wrong. Maybe you are right. Maybe it is time to move on, but just remember, you need to do what's best for you and your family. If you feel like it's time to move on, you know, you make sure you evaluate all the other options to make sure that you're not making a mistake. Okay. Keep that in mind. Let me look at the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Will I ever have guests on my live stream? Randy. That's funny. Adam and I were just talking about that yesterday, I think. It's something that I would consider. Yeah, it's something that I would consider for sure. Maybe in the future. When am I going to sell stickers? Joe, it just... Honestly, guys, with the merch stuff, I sell merchandise at my website, hvacrvideos.com. Okay? These hats are one of the #1 sellers, you know, that I sell, and I just put a social media post out talking about the hats. I have shirts, sweaters, beanies, all that stuff. The merchandise, again, when I started making these videos, they were for my employees. I released them to the public. It became a thing, and people started asking me for merchandise, and I thought it was silly. I'm not going to sell merch, you know, and then eventually I did, and it became a thing, but it's not really my main focus, okay? Don't get me wrong. I make a couple bucks. I try not to gouge people with the merchandise. I typically make about $5 an item is what I make in a profit. So if I'm selling a hat for $28.50, typically I'm making $5 a hat. So I'm not trying to gouge everybody. Same thing with the shirts and everything like that. It's probably not the right way to do things. I don't treat this like it's a business. I treat it because it's just fun for me. Okay. So merchandise is not my focus. Of course, I hear you. I've had a lot of people ask me for stickers, and it's something that I will do eventually. And obviously I'd have to adjust everything because I'm not going to make $5 off of a sticker, that kind of stuff. But it's just not my main focus. My main focus is my business. And I know this sounds weird, but my business, my service business, is my main focus. And if I ever was asked to stop making videos by my customers or anything, I would stop making videos because my business is what keeps me alive. I make a few bucks from this YouTubing, or, you know, being a YouTuber or whatever, making these videos, but my main source of income is my business, and that's my priority. So I always focus on that. You know, it's hard enough. Like, I do 2 videos a week and 1 live stream a week. That's actually a lot of work doing all that stuff. Surprisingly, I spend quite a few hours every single day editing videos and doing video stuff. So I will get to stickers. I know I've seen people ask in the comments too, do I ship merchandise overseas? Right now, I don't. It's something that I will figure out. It just hasn't been a priority, and don't take offense to that. It's just, it's difficult to figure everything out. And there's only so many hours in a day to figure stuff out. And, you know, figuring out how to sell merchandise overseas for taxes and tax liabilities, and it's a nightmare. Even just selling normal merchandise is sales tax is a nightmare. Technically, I have to pay sales tax in every single state, every single county, every single city. Finding out who to pay that sales tax to, it's a giant nightmare. And in the end of it, when you look at your profits for the year and you look at how much stress and time you put into it, it's almost not worth it to sell merchandise. And again, don't take that the wrong way, guys. That's just a glimpse into the way that I do things. So I definitely will get to making and selling stickers eventually. It just hasn't become a priority for me. So I've been so busy with normal work stuff, but I will get to it. Okay. So keep emailing me, keep asking me. I'll definitely get to it. I made a video a while back talking about duct detectors, and I had a commenter recently leave me a comment on the video that specifically said, stick to doing the HVAC work and let the professional alarm technicians deal with the smoke detectors. And that was the end of the comment. That's kind of an ignorant comment when you think about it. Okay. But with so being said, I'm going to address it because I told him I would address it on here. So in my area, alarm technicians don't work on smoke detectors. Okay. As much as I would love to say I don't want to deal with smoke detectors and alarm systems, the alarm technicians tell the businesses to contact the HVAC guy to install the smoke detectors. And then I have to install the smoke detector and deal with the alarm wiring, or I have the alarm technician come out and meet me. Actually, I don't ever deal with the alarm panels. I don't get involved in those. I will occasionally hook up the alarm wiring, call the alarm company, make sure they get a trouble condition, a fire condition, and a reset condition. And then I'll usually have the alarm technicians come out and verify everything's working correctly after I'm done. But bottom line, the alarm companies don't do smoke detectors in my area. So it's a giant gray area. Sometimes they'll come out and then they'll be like, yeah, you need to call the HVAC tech to change the smoke detector, you know? And it's like, wow, you were in there, like you couldn't just change it, but hey, I do what I'm told. So it is what it is. All right. And let me see. So, John had emailed me a question about Field Piece, and he had some concerns, and this is a fair thing to email me about because, you know, I am a point of contact, whatever you want to call me, an influencer or something like that. And in the past, I've worked with Field Piece Instruments, doing videos and different things like that. So John had emailed me asking me a question. He says, look, I know you're just a YouTuber, you know, but, you know, do you have any idea why Field Piece stopped including this particular thing in their app? Like, I think he wanted to print out reports to give the customers information or something like that. I'm going to tell you something, John, is that Field Piece is actually a very open book company, and they are very receptive to criticism and or suggestions. So I would highly encourage you, John, to go give Field Piece a call. They're in Orange County, California. They're actually in Orange, California. And all you got to do is call them and they'll answer the phone during normal business hours and just ask them your question and they'll tell you why. Okay. I don't know the particular reason, but Field Piece is a very good company and they're very on top of things. So if you have a question for them, just feel free to give them a call. They're really cool. I will tell you that if something was taken out of their app, majority of the time it either wasn't used and or it might be part of a premium version of their app. Now, I'm not familiar with the Field Piece app because I don't use it very often, but a lot of manufacturers have started to do that, app manufacturers and different things. What people don't realize is the millions of dollars that these app manufacturers, you know, when they make the app and different things like that, they sometimes spend up to millions of dollars developing the app and maintaining the app. And so they have to get something back for their investment. And so oftentimes they will make premium versions where if you want to print out a report, you have to pay or different things like that. I don't know if that's the case in what you're asking about the Field Piece app, but I'd encourage you to go ahead and give them a call and let me know what they have to say. But they're a great company. If any of you guys that are watching this don't know, Field Piece is local. If you ever have something that's broken, like just take it in. I'm not going to tell you that they're going to warranty it no matter what, but I've heard some crazy things about things that they have warrantied when techs just walk in their door and just take things to them. I've heard some really interesting stories about how cool they are. And just trust me, Field Piece is a great company when it comes to taking care of warranties and different things like that. I've had nothing but great experiences. So, yeah. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat. What am I missing? Please, everybody do hit the thumbs up button. It definitely helps out the stream. Have I watched Ace Ventura Pet Detective? Yes, I have watched Ace Ventura Pet Detective. I watched that in the movie theater right when it came out. I am that old. And that is a hilarious movie. I was a little kid. I should not have watched that when I was in the movie. And I didn't understand what the girl was hiding the entire movie, and then you realize that the girl is Ray Finkle, and Ray Finkle's a guy, Finkle's a man. What? Oh my gosh! And then Ace Ventura has to go wash his mouth out with soap because he just kissed. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, great movie though. Funny, hilarious, stupid movie, but it's funny. Reyes Pariah, you said you got your hat sent to a skybox to Trinidad. Reyes, I don't know if I pronounced your name right. Some other people have told me about this before. Can you send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and tell me how you did that? Because I know that there's a lot of people in other countries that have done that, and I would love to be able to tell people how to do that. So I know that there's services that will order merchandise and different things from the United States and handle the shipping on behalf of the consumer. And I'd love to find out more information about those services. So again, Rayaz, if I'm butchering your name, I apologize, but please send me an email and give me more details about that because I know people want to know that information. So please let me know if you could. Send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Let's see. HVACR owners make $8 an hour with all the unbilled overtime. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, Vlad. I make money, but there's a lot of stress and stuff that goes into the business when the employees aren't even working. There definitely is. So, David Rivas, thank you so very much for the support, man. He said he really liked the shirts. I really appreciate it. See what else we got here. Okay, so Reyes, again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. You said in Trinidad, you guys use in the AC department, you hardly get OEM parts, so you have to take what you get most of the time. And guess what? So I have the luxury of being able to order OEM components as much as possible. It's the easiest change out. You just put it in, you change it out, and you move on, right? But you make a very good point. And as the whole craziness of the virus and all that stuff is going on right now, it's getting harder and harder to get parts. And this is really going to separate technicians from parts changers, because we're going to have to start using more aftermarket parts, and we're going to have to start putting logic into the parts that we choose, and we're going to have to field adjust things and really make do with what we can get when part shortages really start to hit the fan. And I don't think it's as bad as it's going to get. I think it's going to get worse as time goes on. So we're really going to have to start learning how to make things work a lot more, like normal people in other countries have to do all the other time, you know? All right, let's see what else we got in here. How did you find out about HVAC shows? You would like to go to some shows to better yourself. Crazy Dragon Chen. What do you mean HVAC shows? It really depends. Do you mean like on YouTube? Do you mean on, actual trade shows? It really depends. Feel free to send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. If you're talking about trade shows and different things like that, then what you want to do is subscribe to the HVAC monthly magazines. There's regional ones for your area, Contracting Business, HVACR News, RSCS Magazine, different things like that. They all usually advertise the local trade shows that's going on. They happen all over the country. If you follow any of the big Facebook groups, if you're in the groups, you'll usually see people advertising what shows are happening and different things like that. If you want to talk about it more, feel free to send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I can sure push you in the right direction, answer your question a little bit more in depth. What's on the back of my hoodies? You want to buy one, but you like the Solo logo on the left breast. I'll show you. The back of my hoodie says HVACR Videos. Let me find one right now. So this is a HVACR hoodie. It's a really heavy duty sweater. Okay. And then on the back, it says HVACR Videos. Just like that. So this is one that I actually had say HVACR Videos. I have a couple different items. I have a t-shirt. We call this the flag t-shirt. It has a flag on the right sleeve. And then on the back, it says HVACR Videos. And then I have a big picture diagnoses shirt. Hold on. The big picture diagnoses shirt has the snowflake on the front. And then it says HVACR Videos, big picture diagnoses on the back. So, and then we have beanies. The beanies are super simple. They say HVACR. And then the same thing. That is a cuffed and this is a non-cuffed. Now, the story behind the beanies and the hats. The beanies and the hats, I wanted technicians to be able to wear these at work without advertising my brand necessarily. They have my color scheme and they have my logo, but they don't really interfere because I don't want my technicians wearing crazy stuff at work. So I wanted to make the hats this way too. So the hat simply says HVACR with my color scheme on it. It's a black flex fit hat. But what's interesting, you guys can't really see this, but I can see through the hat. It's a very breathable material. And I stressed that I wanted a black underbill on the hat. So that way, when our fingers are greasy and dirty, there's nothing worse than having a hat with like a gray color or a green color, and then your fingers get all dirty and the hat gets ruined. So I purposely went with those so people can wear them to work. So, all right, let's see what else we got going on in here. What am I missing? No worries, John Cruz. I have no problem answering emails. You're lucky you're one that I actually paid attention to. Sometimes they slip through the cracks and I don't get to them. So, right on, Jay Leroy. Thank you so very much, man. Let's see what else we got going on in here. Let's see. Diagnoses. I said diagnoses. Diagnoses. Diagnosis. Ironically, there's two different ways to say that, diagnoses and diagnosis. They both kind of mean the same thing, but there's actually a difference between the two. It's if you read about it, it makes sense. But diagnoses is a way to say it, and diagnosis is also another way to say it. Let me see. Where's the Coke nose? Not today. Not really having any issues. Best mini split brand. I don't install a lot of mini splits, nor have I. I've probably installed maybe 5 or 10 in my career. But I hear nothing but good things about the Mitsubishi Hyperheat mini splits. They seem to be the top of the line, but I've never installed one. Don't know much about them. I know they're probably expensive. I've installed Samsung, Fujitsu, some other off brands before. I mean, they've all worked, but you know, I've heard good things. One thing I will say about mini splits, when it comes to most of the brands, they typically stop, you know, after 5-6 years. They usually can't get parts for them very much, and you end up having to replace the whole unit. Not Mr. Cool. Let's address the elephant in the room. Most mini splits are actually made by the same manufacturers. So like Mr. Cool is just a brand. They have a great advertising department, and they really have some great advertising videos. It's advertised as a DIY mini split. Yeah, not really my thing, but you know, they've sent me a bunch of emails trying to get me to make videos with their mini splits, but it's not really my style. If I showed you guys the emails that I get on a daily basis from people, right now I'm getting so many emails, people wanting me to play video games, and it's so frustrating that, hi, I really like your video, we want you to advertise our game. It's like, you obviously don't watch my videos if you want me to advertise a game. What the stupid, dumb. You thought one was plural. Yeah, one is plural, but it's interesting. Google it. Google the difference between diagnoses and diagnosis. It's actually, or diagnose. It's actually interesting when you realize what it truly means and the differences between the two, because it's not what most people think. It's not just a plural thing. Could I take a control board out of a train installing high and low cutouts, etc.? Yeah, you could. It's not ideal, but yeah, you could. I've done it in the past when you've had circuit boards that failed and the customer didn't want to pay for it, and you just got to make it work. Yeah. A lot of the times the trains have a separate ignition module, so you can make it work with a thermostat and a bunch of relays and contactors and pressure controls. Certainly, you can make it work if you really know what you're doing. Let's see, David Rivas, you came across a freezer condensing unit without a dual pressure control, circuit voltage wired nutted together. When it pumped down, the compressor pulls into a vacuum. You're surprised compressor hasn't died. Ironically, I've seen stuff like that, David, and yeah, it baffles me as to how long those compressors will run. But when it's running in a vacuum, when it's pumped down, it's not getting compressor cooling. So the windings in that compressor are just baking their little heart away, and eventually it's going to take a dump for sure. So, let's see what else. What the frick? Yeah, spam crap in the chat right now. Dang. All right, let's see what else we got going on in here. Let me click that. What would I tell a residential tech that wants to go commercial? Also, do I ever work on residential equipment? No, I don't work on residential equipment. I mean, I do it for family and friends. But if you want to go into commercial, what I would tell you is that you need to understand the basics and the fundamentals of air conditioning and refrigeration. Sometimes I will tell you that on the commercial side that you're really not going to get much into sales like you do with residential. So you're going to be stepping into a different market where oftentimes you're going to a location and you're just dealing with a point of contact like a manager, and you go up to diagnose something and then you submit a quote and move on. You're not there convincing, typically in the commercial side, you're not convincing your point of contact to go with the repair. There's usually someone in a corporate office or something like that that's responsible for repairs, and it's going to take a week or two before they approve things. But when it comes to the technology and the things that we're working on in the commercial side compared to residential, it's the same concepts, just on a bigger scale. Okay. On residential, you're going to deal with 5-ton compressors, and usually smaller than that. In commercial, you can get up to hundreds of tons in a compressor. I mean, big giant things, you know, but the fundamentals are still the same. You still have control voltage. You still have pressure safeties. You're still concerned with compressor cooling, i.e. superheat. You're still concerned with condenser efficiency, i.e. subcooling. You know, the basics are still there. The condenser has to be clean. The evaporator has to be cleaned. If you don't have proper airflow, it's the same as residential. You're going to have freeze up conditions. You're going to have low superheat conditions. You're going to hurt the compressor. The superheat's going to go too low. It's going to flood back to the compressor. I mean, it's still the same concepts. It's just on a grander scale. You're going to have more controls involved. You know, it's not that difficult. Okay, you just need to open your eyes and, you know, just start researching. I mean, it's a great trade. If you want to get and make more money, majority of the time, the commercial side is the place to do it. And you don't have to worry about sales. You don't have to worry about typically commissions or anything like that. It's just usually a very good hourly rate pay, and you just work your way up. Hopefully that answers your question. If I don't answer anybody's questions, I've said it a million times, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. So let's see. Facilities guys are easier to deal with than homeowners. Jason Johnson, majority of the time, yes. You get a good relationship, you're a good, honest person, and most of the time, I don't even have to call facilities people for permission. I know what I'm allowed to do, and I have a pretty big number that I'm allowed to make it to before I have to ask for permission. But that takes a long time to get to that point. I've worked with some restaurants for 20 years or more, and so I have good relationships, and I know what they're going to fix, and I know what they're not going to fix, and I know that I'm just allowed to do certain things. And but again, that's not every situation, and don't ever get cocky with that. But have I ever talked about arc flash or arc blast? No, I don't really talk too much about that stuff. I do address the fact that I probably need to have better PPE. I do not have a beekeeper suit. I do not have arc flash rated gloves or anything like that. Probably need to get a little bit more conscientious of that kind of stuff, but you'd be surprised how many people on the commercial side don't. Now, I don't do heavy industrial. I do light commercial refrigeration and air conditioning. But granted, there is danger in anything, and I realize that. So probably don't talk about it enough, though. Let's see what's going on in here. What am I missing? Why don't residential systems have economizers? Bob Builder, you know, honestly, they are going to start having economizers more and more. Right now on the residential side, it's kind of funny because, you know, the powers that be, the bean counters and engineers that set policies and SEER ratings and all this crap that the residential side has to do, and Title 24, which is a California Energy Code and all this stuff, they say that you have to have certain size returns, and you have to test your ductwork, and you have to have fresh air coming into the building, but they don't require economizers. Yet on the commercial side, you're required to have economizers. Economizers are coming to the residential side. In fact, I have this vision in my head of an amazing air conditioning system that'll probably be worth more than my house, that's going to have an economizer built into it. It's all going to be custom and all that. I'll probably never do it, but I have this idea in my head. Economizers need to come into the residential side. It's something that's going to have to happen. I don't understand why it hasn't yet. I know there's some companies out there that have tried them, but it needs to come in on a grand scale. You need to get big manufacturers that make the equipment make economizers too, that integrates into the equipment and the control strategy and different things like that. That way it works efficiently. But I don't know why it hasn't come in yet. It's just not something that became very popular. When is the Christmas music starting? The Christmas music... Oh, that's not the Christmas music. There it goes. It's coming. Only a few of you know what that is. It is coming. If you guys don't know what that is, last year, without telling anybody, I did something, and a lot of people got some cool things without even knowing they were going to get them. And something along those lines is going to come this year too. So stay tuned. I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do it. It's going to be random. It's going to be, you're not going to expect the way that I'm going to do it. And just stay tuned. But it is coming. If you guys want to know what it is that I'm talking about, you need to go find my video around the holidays. I think it was November, December, sometime last year. I released a video. That was the theme music to the video. And we gave away a bunch of really cool stuff. And we're going to do something very similar this year too. So stay tuned. That will be coming towards the end of the year. All right. Well, I am going to wrap this up, guys. It is that time. It's time for me to go get some food. I am hungry. So we're going to cue up the outro music. And we will, if I can do this, catch you on the next one. thought I was done. What did I say? You know, I'm telling you, it's the people that stay till the end. I don't do this every time, but sometimes I do this. Sometimes I don't understand why you guys stay, even when I don't give things away. But let's go ahead and give some stuff away, because I think it's one of those things that I like to be spontaneous, and I like to be the person that doesn't follow what everybody else follows. See, I don't give things away. Like last Christmas when I made that video, it wasn't about getting subscribers. It wasn't about getting views or likes. It was about giving back. Okay. And it will be something in the similar this year. It's not going to be about follow me, make sure you're a this, make sure you're a that. I don't care about that crap. Okay. I just care about doing things the way that I like to do them. And I like to do things differently. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're coming into the fall right now. I'm going to give away some beanies. Okay. I'm going to pick 4 people randomly in the chat. Okay. Start commenting now. I got a random comment picker. It's going to pick someone in the chat. And you know, you'll get picked. Okay. So hopefully you will. So start commenting right now, start it, and I'll roll the thing here in just a minute. We're going to pick 4 people. And when you do get picked, if I pick your name, you need to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. You need to give me your address, phone number, date of birth, social security. No, I'm just kidding. But address, phone number, and what you want, a cuffed or a non-cuffed beanie, because I got 2 choices and we'll get it shipped out to you. Okay. So we're going to pick the first person right now. Boom. Matthew, Matthew, unknown. You're a winner. Okay. You got to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Matthew. I'm going to write down that name. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and pick another winner. Here we go. Right now. Boom. Ike, you want a beanie, bud? Ike HVAC. Send me an email, bud. Tell me what you want. Cuffed or non-cuffed. I'll get you sent a beanie, okay? Ike, you got my contact information. We're going to go ahead and pick a second one. Let me write down Ike's name. Ike knows who he is. I know Ike very well. Next one. Quiet Tone 610. You are a winner. Quiet Tone 610. You got a beanie. We're going to pick one more. Let me write down Quiet Tone's name. Quiet Tone 610. Make sure you reference your name in the email that you send me, okay? And the last one is going to be Mario J.805. Mario J.805. Send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Tell me what you want. That's it. Let me write that down. Mario. That's it. You guys can stop commenting. Stop. No. Mario J. That's it. We already gave away the 4 today. So maybe next time we'll give away some more. But I like doing things random, and I don't like following the normal thing that everybody else does. It's not about viewers or subscribers or whatever. It's about giving back. That's the way I see it. So thank you guys so very much. I really appreciate all of you guys. I'm going to go ahead and, congratulations to the winners, and maybe whoever didn't win, maybe a win on the next one. I will go ahead and cue up the outro music again. I'll give you guys the honor of listening to that really cool 80s flashback music, and we will catch you guys on the next one.